So, in Sri Lanka, what's the line between a vital medicine and a dangerous drug? Ever wonder how that's decided? Well, it all comes down to a single, powerful piece of law: the Poisons, Opium, and Dangerous Drugs Ordinance. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how this law works, how it classifies these substances, and, most importantly, why it all matters so much. Let's get right into it. So, first things first, why do we even need a law like this? Because drug misuse isn't just some abstract problem you see on the news. It has real, devastating consequences that ripple through society. You can see it right here. We're talking about families being torn apart, a rise in crime and violence, and a massive strain on our healthcare system and our economy. This isn't just a list. This is the reality that the entire legal framework is built to fight against. All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. We've just touched on the societal threat, and we'll dig in a bit more. Then, we're going to look at classification from two different angles. First, the three practical categories that people like pharmacists use every day, and then the five official legal groups from the ordinance itself. After that, we'll see how the law gets smart by going right to the natural source of these drugs. And finally, we'll see how it all comes together with law, order, and health. Okay, let's officially kick off with Section 1, the threat to society. You have to think of this as the foundation, the why behind everything else we're about to discuss. It's all about understanding the real-world damage that makes this law so absolutely necessary. This really breaks it down nicely. You've got these three huge areas of impact. It starts with the direct health problems, things like addiction and overdose. But it doesn't stop there. Those health issues fuel major social problems like crime and unemployment. And of course, both of those create this massive economic burden, from the cost of healthcare to policing. See how they're all connected? It's not three separate issues. It's one big vicious cycle where each part makes the others worse. Now, moving into our second section. Let's switch gears from the why to the what. Before we dive headfirst into all the dense legal codes, it's actually way more helpful to start with a more practical system. The one that pharmacists and medical professionals are actually using in their day-to-day work. In the real world, it often boils down to these three simple categories. First, you've got crude drugs. Think of these as the raw materials, straight from the plant, totally unprocessed. Then you have medicinal drugs. This is what happens when those crude drugs are processed into standardized treatments that doctors can use. And finally, you have exempted preparations. These are medicines that have just a tiny amount of a narcotic in them, so the rules can be a bit more relaxed. This table just lays it out perfectly. Just follow that example row and it all clicks into place. You start with raw opium. That's your crude drug. Super potent, so the legal control is extremely strict. Then you process it into tincture of opium or laudanum. Now it's a medicinal drug. The strength is still pretty high, so you absolutely need a prescription. But if you dilute it even further, you get paregoric. Now it's an exempted preparation with really low narcotic strength and much looser controls. It's all about the form and the potency. And this comparison makes it even more obvious. On one hand, you have laudanum. That's a medicinal drug because its morphine content is significant. That high strength means it needs strict controls. On the other hand, you have paregoric, which is an exempted preparation. Its opium concentration is so low that the risk is minimal. So what's the takeaway here? It all boils down to one key thing. Concentration dictates classification. And that classification dictates the level of control. It's that simple. Okay, so with that practical framework in our back pocket, we are now ready to tackle the official legal structure. The law itself organizes everything into 5 very specific groups, and they're all laid out in Schedule 3 of the ordinance. So what does the law actually say a dangerous drug is? Well, the legal definition is pretty straightforward. Basically, if a substance is on the list in groups A, B, C, D, or E of the ordinance, then it's a dangerous drug. That's it. This schedule is the final word, the ultimate authority. And here they are, the 5 legal groups. So Group A is actually empty. It's reserved, kind of like a placeholder for any new, extremely dangerous substance that might pop up in the future. Group B is where you find the heavy hitters like morphine and cocaine, powerful drugs that have medical uses but also high abuse potential. Group C is for more moderate narcotics like codeine. Group D is for compound preparations that have just a little bit of narcotic content. And then you have Group E. That's for substances like heroin, which are so dangerous they're almost completely prohibited. Let's just zoom in on Group B for a second, because it perfectly shows the balancing act the law has to perform. Substances like morphine are incredible for treating severe pain, right? So you can't just ban them. But their potential for addiction is incredibly high. So the solution is to allow them for limited medical use, but under the tightest possible controls imaginable. Now let's contrast that with Group E. The prime example here is heroin. With this one, the law has made a judgment call. It's decided that the abuse potential is so astronomical, the danger so extreme, that any potential medical benefit is just completely dwarfed by the risk. And because of that, it's strictly prohibited for pretty much any reason at all. So, up to this point, we've been talking about processed drugs. But the law is smarter than just waiting for them to hit the streets. It goes right back to the beginning. This next section is all about how the ordinance controls the very plants these drugs come from. Which, of course, leads to a really crucial question. Since so many of these dangerous drugs start out as plants, like the poppy or coca plant, how does the law actually stop the problem at its source? Well, the answer is hiding in one very specific, very important section of the ordinance. And that answer is Section 26. Look at how brilliantly this works. Think of it like a chain reaction. First, it legally identifies and defines the source plants themselves. That gives prosecutors the clear definitions they need. That, in turn, allows authorities to control and prevent illegal cultivation. And all of that together gives law enforcement the solid legal ground they need to stand on to take action. Without Section 26, disrupting the supply chain would be infinitely harder. Okay, so let's bring it all home in our final section, law, order, and health. We've got the practical categories, we have the legal groups, and we have control over the source plants. So how does this entire system actually get put into practice to protect people? You know, a law is only as strong as its enforcement, and this isn't a one-man show. It's a huge, coordinated effort. You've got the Police Narcotics Bureau investigating and making arrests. You have the Customs Department acting as the gatekeeper at our borders. The Excise Department handles regulation. And, at the end of the line, the judiciary interprets the law and makes sure justice is served. It's this team approach that gives the ordinance its real power. So, at the end of the day, what's this all for? Every single piece of this law we've talked about, from the simple categories to the complex legal groups and Section 26, it all serves one ultimate goal. It's designed to be a shield, protecting the health of individuals from things like addiction, while also protecting the stability of our society as a whole. But this leaves us with one final and really critical question. This ordinance was enacted decades ago for a world that looked very different. Today, we're facing brand new challenges, incredibly powerful synthetic drugs and vast, sophisticated global trafficking networks. So the question we have to ask is, how does this old framework need to evolve to meet the very real challenges of the 21st century?